Hello. Good morning. Again, I would like to try the microphone. Hold just a second, please. Is this louder? Actually not louder. Yeah. Okay, how about now? Oh, that must be better. Hold just a second, please. Hello, hello. Good morning. New York is snowing. Oh, yeah. Yes, now working. Good. All right. Good morning, everybody. He's here now, and he tried to pass between all the equipment for the live stream.
Okay. Oops. What I need. Uh-oh.
Are you wearing?
Yes.
Now we have a new equipment, which is lighting is proving.
Yes.
Today.
Everything becomes a little professional, more professional by the week. So within 20 years, I think we'll actually
best studio
be more or less at the level of other
Mohammed,
live streams.
thank you. You can hear well. I'm so happy. Good morning.
The only thing is that I'm missing one important thing.
Yes.
So I'll be back.
Thank you. Snow day. Oh. Okay, he disappeared again. Good morning, Jose. Sean, good morning.
Okay.
Max, we are using your light.
Yes, this is what I need to maintain. Okay, we're getting in shape, and please don't mind my odd persona now. It's not some kind of a weird visage that you are seeing. It's just once again I'm wearing these special wake-up glasses, which have been approved for pilots in Lufthansa at least. So, and they actually work pretty well, which means, as you may have guessed, I was up pretty much all night. Yes, so. You know, it is said that you never catch up on sleep that you lost, but I actually don't think that's true. I find it very possible to go without sleep, and then after a while, actually, necessity will speak, and I will sleep for a while, and I'll be okay. So I think, at least in personal experience, we definitely can make up for lost sleep. I just lost my compatriot, who is actually very graciously making a coffee for me, because I didn't even succeed in doing that. But the coffee she makes is always better than the one I make, so I'm happy for that. Okay, so good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Here we are once again. This is almost a year of these live streams. That's unbelievable. Really, it seems like the beginning of the pandemic was just a week ago, if not even sooner, because it's absolutely crazy, the sense of time that we have when we're sort of in one place. Now, of course, the pandemic is still a very big issue. The numbers in the United States are going down, but they are still above the summer high levels that the United States experienced. So things are not very stable yet, although there's a lot of good news in the vaccine front, I should say. The news about the virus, though, is disturbing, and you've had these new variants which were identified in the United Kingdom and in South Africa. They spread to the United States and other places. I speak about the US because, of course, I'm here, and the US is it's sort of like the canary in a mine, which actually will show when it's safe and when it's not safe, in a way, because the situation in the US is probably worse than in most any other place. Still, I just say, but my situation has gotten a lot better. Thank you. This has become one of the rituals of this live stream, and I'm incredibly grateful for the existence of coffee, I must say. And I will actually talk about coffee at some point, because there's also tremendous tragedy involved in the harvesting of coffee. It has been throughout history. And with the issues of climate change, many of the places where coffee is a big staple crop are in fact in danger. But that's for another time. At least so far, I still have my coffee. Thank you. It is always better than the one I make. I have no idea why. I probably have a good idea why. Anyway, okay, so we have these variants. Now, scientists in the US are finding new variants now that have originated perhaps in the United States. Just one second. I have to redo this. I've become dependent on the iPad technology. Thank you for bearing with me. And as was reported in the New York Times, I'm getting today, it's a lot of the information that I have is from the Times, but it's also from the Atlantic and on certain other journals that sort of pass my way late at night. So in a study posted this Sunday, research has come across at least 7 more variants. Okay. And it's spotted in states throughout the country, and they've all evolved from a mutation in the same genetic letter or chemical position, I should say. Now, it's unclear whether these variants are more contagious. It's unclear whether they are more pernicious, I should say, more deadly. But it is cause for concern, and it's also cause for concern to find out as quickly as possible whether this mutation in this one genetic position actually has affected the efficacy of the vaccines. Now, the good news in the vaccines, of course, is that now even Cuba has developed their own vaccine. It's being tested now. So you have one more vaccine version, which probably will actually be in production rather soon. Hopefully, there are 4 actually vaccines in Cuba, which have been in the process of being developed, and one of them, as I read here, is in the final stage of testing. Or no, I'm wrong. We'll enter a final stage of testing next month. That's very nice. And it is true that Cuba has an excellent medical system that's a model for many countries. Now, along with that, of course, as I mentioned before, and as we all know, there's a vaccine in China, there's a vaccine in Russia, and the problem of vaccinating the world is distributing the vaccine. And while we have our so-called rich countries able to purchase large quantities and actually corner the markets on certain of these vaccines, that leaves countries which do not have that kind of great financial ability basically in the lurch. So, and in a very dangerous way for the world, because if you do not have a very significant proportion of the population of the world vaccinated, you have the threat of recurrence of the virus, and not only that, of recurrence of perhaps more dangerous mutations of the virus. It's not so unlike the problem of antibiotics, where if you, on the one hand, you overuse antibiotics in cases where it's not necessary. This does not have to really the parallel with vaccine, this particular part of it. But in antibiotics, if you do not take the full regimen of an antibiotic, when you do have a bacterial infection, which an antibiotic can actually help, that infection, or they say that the bacteria which remain after that, this incomplete antibiotic treatment, can actually reinfect the person who is sick with the bacterial infection, in fact, in a way which is worse than the original. Okay. I'm no medical expert, but that's just common sense. And now the Biden administration, which is really trying, I think, very hard to, I would say, undo the neglect and destruction of the past 4 years in the United States, has at least entered into what I would say Wow! I think these glasses are not good enough. Maybe I'm still becoming tongue-tied. Anyway, has now taken steps to become a participant in the goodwill, which, for instance, we see from China and from Russia, and of course, as we'll say, this all has to do with strategic posturing, etc., etc. But in any case, this helping to distribute the vaccines, and this was what I was sort of detoured about this. But I should come back to my regular train of thought, which I think is rather scatterbrained actually now. But the Biden administration has come up with a framework for donating surplus vaccines from the United States to countries in need. And that's also very good news. Now, also, the pharmaceutical company Novavax is committed to selling at least 1.1 billion doses of its vaccine. Okay, I have to raise myself up. So I'm going to raise this because I will. Is that better? Great. Okay. I'll just highlight a couple other things which the Biden administration is doing. I think this is important for us to appreciate, in a way, that there is a real effort to come back to some kind of normalcy in domestic and international relations. So that's the administration has unveiled an overhaul of the immigration system, which was completely broken, and they described it as a humane response to the 4 years of the previous administration's assault on immigrants. It's called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021, and it actually amounts to a lengthy sort of wish list for pro-immigration activists, and it is the beginning of the Biden campaign's promise to provide a path to citizenship for at least 11 million undocumented immigrants. And it will allow virtually all, as I read from the New York Times here, all undocumented immigrants to eventually apply for citizenship, and will also speed the entry and processing of seekers of asylum in the United States. And considering the unrest in so much of the world, that's also very important. It's also supposed to invest $4 billion, which now that we're talking about trillions, seems like about a drop in the bucket, in the economies of Central American companies to reduce migration to the United States. This is something that they always talk about, and we'll see what that actually means. I reserve judgment on that part. Okay, now another thing which is actually very good news for the world is that the United States is offering to re-enter talks on what we call the nuclear deal that the previous administration abandoned with Iran. And of course that can only be very good, because this, the whole specter of nuclear arms, of the development of nuclear weapons, there is something which is more than, or I should say worse than crazy. Okay, I think I will leave this now and go to what is most pressing for this. You're right. Oh, that was fast. That was my 20-minute session with these. Yeah, I can put them here. That's okay. That's this is yes, I know.
Did you wake up?
I did wake up, kind of. Yeah, it's still not enough, but I am more or less awakened by these glasses and the coffee. So most current in the news in the United States, and I once again apologize to all the people from other countries that I'm concentrating on the U.S., but it's really, there's so much that's important for the whole world that's happening here. And the attention in the U.S. is focused on Texas, and which has been, like a lot of the U.S., I must say, experiencing bitter cold weather. It's incredibly cold weather. Now, and what happened was that the electrical grid basically failed. Now, finally, that is in the process of being restored, although I think I've read most recently that there are at least 2 million people still without power. But what is happening now is that for 2/3 of Texas residents, the water systems providing drinkable, potable water have broken down. So there are millions of people without drinkable water in Texas. Now, this is, of course, a tragedy of a natural disaster, but it's also a tragedy of political will. And this is what is important for all of us. And just as private citizens, not only as musicians, but as musicians, this is very important for us, because our profession and the profession of the arts depends on our society. That depends on the functioning of our society, so that we can actually enhance society in a way. Now, what do I mean by the lack of political will? And we see something in Texas, which is what we've seen earlier. We've seen this also in the response of Republicans and of several right-wing groups to what happened on January 6th as well. and we've seen this in other cases. We've seen this throughout history, where you take a problem and you blame it on, or you use it, I should say, to accomplish other goals by blaming something which actually is not quite relevant. Now, the biggest problem in Texas is that Texas has very much what's called a deregulated electricity market. Now, that is common throughout the United States, where it was been thought that if you have competition among different companies, actually you have lower prices, more efficiency, etc., etc., etc. These are the canons of standard economic theory. However, in most places, this competition has been overseen by what is known as the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. It's known by the acronym FERC. And I should say that the deregulated market was established by another council. This is in Texas, called the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, ERCOT. So, the problem is that ERCOT decided not to be part of the regulated umbrella, not to be under the regulated umbrella of FERC. Okay, enough of these acronyms, but I find them kind of cute. And what has happened is that other states, actually, at the urging of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, have always installed what is called reserve capacity, which makes sense. If we are in our own homes, for instance, we also say, so we should save money for a rainy day. I know this is more than a rainy day, but the Texas government never did that. Okay, and what has happened, of course, is that the grid did not have any reserve capacity and broke down because of the extreme cold. And this is now, what do I mean, or what should I say now about the sort of blaming the others, or shifting the blame from what is real to what is not real in order to further goals which actually have nothing to do with the problem. So the biggest problem in Texas have to do with the fact that gas lines, natural gas lines, in Texas is a big state that has fracking, has lots of natural gas, etc., that the gas lines did not survive in many places, did not survive the cold. They broke, and of course, the gas could not actually make its way to its customers. So they say that wellheads and pipelines froze. Then you have the electrical grid is very much largely powered, or I should say, well, powered is a good word, by natural gas in Texas. But what people in the government there are saying, on the one hand, are that, in fact, this is a failure, or shows the failure of green technology, because the wind turbines froze. That is. Of course, that is partly true, but in Texas, the electrical grid is powered by wind only at less than 15%. So a complete failure of their wind infrastructure would not lead to a particular collapse of power for Texas. But that doesn't matter, because this gives certain people the opportunity to actually say that, well, now the current administration is promoting these green technologies, which, as we can see, do not work. Okay. Well, this is, unfortunately, I have so much information about this. But the problem is, of course, that the government in Texas never actually invested enough in supporting the electrical grid, I should say. And as I read, this is in the Atlantic, they said that the state's elected leaders have preferred, rather than to focus on issues like infrastructure, which is something that perhaps government needs to do, because that infrastructure is something which affects everybody. And so it affects rich people, it affects poor people, it affects large businesses, it affects small businesses, etc., etc. So this is really the perfect thing for the government to be responsible for. Okay, so instead of that, are you okay? Yeah. As stated in the Atlantic, the state's elected leaders have preferred to focus on various liberal-owning initiatives. This is the way that culture can actually be manipulated and in a way abused, such as the menace of transgender athletes, on whether NBA games feature the national anthem, and of course getting out of the way of local municipalities, in the sense that they're allowing local you see, this is impossible. Municipalities. I don't know what language I'm supposed to speak. So allowing local municipalities to allocate their own funds. So if they don't want to pay for reserve power, that's fine. That's okay. And so you have, in response to this really incredible emergency in Texas, someone like here, where I have to read this because the entire thing it's so incredible. This is Tim Boyd, who is the mayor of Colorado City, Texas, and he put on Facebook, he said, the city and county, along with power providers or any other service, owes you nothing. I'm sick and tired of people looking for a damn handout. Of course, all these people do pay taxes, who he's talking about. If you are sitting at home in the cold because you have no power and are sitting there waiting for someone to come rescue you because you are lazy, this is a direct result of your raising. That's it. This is sadly a product of a socialist government where they feed people to believe that the few will work and the others will become dependent for handouts. I'll be damned if I'm going to provide for anyone that is capable of doing it themselves. In other words, all these people who are freezing, hell with them. The bottom line, quit crying and looking for a handout. Get off your ass and take care of your own family. I guess what he means is, chop up your furniture so that you can actually create some fire so you don't freeze to death. Okay, and then finally, only the strong will survive and the weak will perish. Or, as he wrote on faces, parish. Now, of course, a parish is a religious community or religious section of and parishes are supposed to care for one another. So I wonder if that was some kind of Freudian slip. Of course, there was a great outcry, and this Tim Boyd resigned. But we have someone else from Texas, Ted Cruz. This is one of Trump's great enablers, who was supposed to be this big supporter of what is great in Texas. And what happened when the cold wave hit is he cut out and moved to Cancun. That's nice that he could do that, isn't it? Yes, that's a great sense of responsible government we have there. Okay, I will talk just a little bit more about the cold. Yes, I have to apologize. I do this a lot in any case, so I don't have to apologize. So I won't. But you'll understand why I'm spending a lot of time on this. But it's not so much time. There are people now also wondering, well, there's climate change, which is supposed to be warming, but we have throughout the world, not only in Texas, of course, we have tremendously cold weather happening, and this happens because of what is called the polar vortex. And during the winter months, it generally breaks down from the poles, and this is an area of low pressure. And that I won't get into this. Will take too much time. But those of you who understand. Otherwise, other people sort of trust. But in any case, you have this massive cold air, the low pressure, and what happens is that this area of low pressure keeps the cold air in the north, around the North Pole and around the South Pole, of course. One issue with global warming is that this polar vortex, this is breaking down at a significantly greater level, and that actually permits the cold air from there to move south, or from the South Pole to move north. But this North Pole is where we see a lot of the research at least being done. At least that's what I read. And you have other things like La Nina, El Nino, etc., which also are natural occurring things, but the fact that we do have a breakdown of the polar ice does lead to a greater ability for the cold air actually to move south, and that's what is happening now. So warming can actually produce colder temperatures in many places. Now I go just to something very different, and it's in Belarus. It seems like the situation that's there's a big crackdown on dissent by the president Lukashenko, and a court in Belarus now sentenced two journalists to a couple years in prison simply for reporting from one of the demonstrations. Now, why is that newsworthy for everybody? Because that is just another indication that we have a crackdown on dissent, a crackdown on what I should say would be fair news reporting. See, so what they did not try to tell people that they should go to the demonstration. They just reported on the existence of this, and that apparently has become against the law. We see this happening in many, many places in the world, and this is something that we must be very concerned about. Okay, and personally, I wonder now, and it's partly because I was involved in a concert, sort of to what should I say, to not, I don't want to say popularize, but to, well, also to raise money for, but I say popularize the plight of the Rohingya in Myanmar. And now that there's a coup, I'm just wondering what their status will be, because it can only be worse. That's something where perhaps I will talk about later, not today. Okay, now we come to some other kinds of news, and I decided to actually do this. Yes, it's all right. Everything's okay. This has to do with Mars, of course, and the good news that we have, or exciting news, and is that the NASA mission, which carried the robotic explorer, which was named Perseverance, actually landed successfully on Mars, and this is this little rover. It's a kind of like a car, so which carries a lot of cameras, etc., and will begin to analyze the chemical makeup of the Martian landscape around where it will be exploring, to see if there's any trace of fossilized life, because it is possible that at one time Mars was a planet full of flowing water and was actually able to support life. That's quite fascinating. Okay, so that's nice thing. Then as I've been doing, I want to also just mention about another woman who is really not celebrated in the way she should be, I say. And this woman is a businesswoman and was the first, I would say, black businesswoman in the U.S. to organize and run a bank. And this was in Richmond, Virginia. So first I will just get her photo. Hopefully I have it. No. Uh-oh. Oh no, it is gone. I'm sorry, but I will find it. This one. Her name is Maggie Lena Walker. And let me find her photo, because should be here. Bear with me. I had it. I don't know why I lost it. Yeah, here we are. Her photo is not very clear, of course, but it does show you something. Can we see that, actually? Okay. And why do I mention her? She was the daughter of a slave, a freed slave, of course, and was born right at the beginning of Reconstruction. And she was also the director of what was called the Independent Order of St. Luke, which was one of the largest African American fraternal benefit societies. And she bought a building, opened a department store, and she edited a newspaper, which was the St. Luke Herald, and organized the first bank to enable people with limited funds, with limited money, to actually I would say, raise their station in life. And as it is mentioned in all of the biographies of her which I read, he says her work was not for individual benefit, it was not for her own enrichment, it was for the benefit of her community. And this is something which we don't think of when we think of bankers, but this is what should be, in a way, one of the essential functions of banks. Okay, now I turn to one of the most venerable species in the world. We may find this species on Mars also, we don't know. And that is the cockroach.
Yeah, no.
I know, people are going, oh God, what are you talking about? Cockroach. But this is fascinating, I have to say, because it's from the Journal of Ethology. And the particular kind of cockroach, which is a wood-feeding cockroach, is called, which is a Salganea taiwanensis. It's a scientific name. And the co-author of the article, which is a Japanese biologist, Haruka Osaki, who's in Kyushu University in Japan, she first observed that these roaches often had damaged or missing wings, but also that they mated for life. So you had the wife and the husband cockroach, and they were monogamous and mated for life. They stayed together. Now, what is very interesting is that they actually ate each other's wings, or part of their wings, and in that way, in a certain way, that forced them to stay together. It's very curious, but the idea of these faithful monogamous roaches, I think, is absolutely wonderful. So, and from that, I turn to one more thing in Japan, which I think is unbelievably ridiculous. And this comes from the English journal, the Daily Mail. And I can only believe that this is some kind of a joke. But they reported that in Japan, the world's first noise-canceling fork was designed, was built. I mean, this has to be a joke. This is because, in Japan, what is traditional is to actually slurp noodles.
Ramen.
Especially the ramen noodles. Yes, that's right. So it's important to make a sound when you eat. And they're saying, well, this disturbs foreigners. People are disturbed by this. Of course, I hear overtones of racial insensitivity there, of course, and that's, I think, kind of a no-no nowadays. But anyway, the Japanese, who are always eager to be very polite, I guess, developed the noise-canceling fork. So you can slurp your noodles, and it cancels the noise of the slurping. But I think that this has to be a joke, because I don't know any self-respecting Japanese who would actually eat these noodles, this ramen, with a fork. Now, if it were the noise-canceling chopsticks, then we could say, wow, that's unbelievable. But the noise-canceling forks, no. But it did appear in the Daily Mail, including a picture of the fork and a video and commentary by people who were so disturbed by the noise of slurps. I guess there's still enough to laugh about, I should say. And with that, I turn to what I really want to talk about. And I have to say that I was originally going to continue introducing solo pieces for clarinet. But I've spent this whole week really focused on period instruments. And I find it not so easy to move back and forth. I mean, one time I thought it would kind of not so difficult to move from period instruments to that, but I find it more and more difficult to do that. And I will devote something once again to period instruments, and I received a special request to talk about the concerto of Johann Stamitz. And I think that is a very nice little topic, that together with other very early clarinet music, and just to show how virtuosity actually was present even from the very beginning. And of course that is to do with the clarinet, but it's not only the clarinet, it's other instruments, that this is an essential ingredient in music as well. But that will wait for another time. I didn't feel I wanted to move into that territory right at the moment, and I don't feel quite comfortable in playing particularly these hyper virtuosic pieces, which I was going to play for you today. So maybe that will wait for next week. But I do want to speak about rhythm still, and I've been having interesting, conversations via text with the wonderful clarinetist and clarinet teacher, pedagogue, and thinker Harri Maki, who's from Finland, who is very important in the Sibelius Academy in Finland, about the issue of internal rhythm. And he brought out an interesting point, which I've been thinking of also for a long time, which has to do with the problems of computers and with sequencers and programs, etc., which actually provide these beats for people, so you don't perhaps have an internal sense of rhythm. But I want to actually look at the specifics of rhythm in different musics throughout the world. And today I start with classical music. This is, of course, the music that I grew up with, that I have great knowledge of, I should say. That's probably the only thing I really have great knowledge of. And which I have great love for myself. And hopefully all of you who are listening have the same kind of love, and I'm sure you do, for that. Now, a very critical and distinguishing factor, or feature I should say, of classical music is that the beat actually changes. We have the beat which is steady, but it actually depends on character, and it can get faster or get slower. And it depends in tonal music on harmonic motion. And we go back to a very early live stream when I was talking about Brahms, and I probably will come back to this as well, about how Brahms eschewed the metronome, and how Brahms also was a big advocate of what he called flexible tempo. And of course he was not alone, because this was and should be a guiding principle in classical music. And we have this also even in the markings of Beethoven, where you have, and I don't have to give specific examples, but maybe I will do that. And for that I need the score, because I don't trust my memory to remember exactly the metronome markings that he made. But let me see. I will come and get this and come right back. I think that it is here. think I had taken it out. Because I wanted to play the piece for. So I think it's over there. Hopefully I'll be able to find it. Oh, it's right here. That's great. Oh no, this is the wrong one. But, wait, must be here. Okay. Now, much has been said about Beethoven's tempo markings, and so when he got his metronome and he started to mark his works, and of course it was quite late. I think it had to be at least 1815, which is after many of the works which he had marked which were written considerably earlier than that, and of course he was also deaf at that time. So he was going over the music in his head. And this is also some things that I've talked about before. But, okay, here it is. His metronome marking of 1817. So I was pretty much in the right ballpark. This is his fourth symphony. That's when he wrote. So it starts his adagio at 66. Okay. And then you have the Allegro vivace after the introduction, where the whole note before he has this quarter note equals 66 in the introduction. And then the Allegro vivace comes and is the whole note at whole note equals 80. Now the question is, what do you make of this conversion? And there are other pieces like this also. And if I go here and just play a tiny bit of it. So we are in B flat major, and we start this way. 2. So around that 66 tempo, etc., etc. And then that moves on, and then it comes to a point here where we have this here. I'm sorry, that's really stupid of me. Sorry, because we have to go to F major. And then we have, and then again, then we have that way here. So the question is, what do we make of this kind of conversion here? I apologize for my terrible piano playing also. Yes, I had given myself an ultimatum to practice the piano every day, and I did that for a while. Then I didn't. So now my piano playing has gone down the drain. But I promise promised that it will get better. Anyway, okay, I come back to this idea of this conversion. Now, from 66 there to 80, you think that there is nothing there. But in fact, I believe, and of course, I think when Beethoven he's going one and then he's doing this here, that the tempo here is actually should be in a way related that the eighth note becomes becomes actually the quarter note of the becomes the half note of the allegro molto. That's way. That's what I'm trying to say. But the character of the beginning means that is slower, but as it gains intensity, it starts to move ahead and then reaches this tempo here, that way. So the fact that the tempo actually moves back and forth is also something that we can feel ourselves when we practice with the metronome, because certain things all of a sudden seem like the metronome is going faster. Other times it seems like the metronome is going slower. Now that's not necessarily because we don't have any kind of internal rhythm, but that's because we do have an internal rhythm, in fact, that feels the relationship between tempo and character. And I think that has to do with the excitement we feel, probably, as things change. And there's also something that I'm sure we were, as people, we're not necessarily aware of. And I have, for instance, the great example of the brilliant and very important conductor Arturo Toscanini. And I've done so many of these live streams, I'm sure that I'm just repeating myself. But anyway, everything works with everything else, so repetition is not a terrible thing. So Toscanini, when he first heard a recording of his Eroica Symphony, Beethoven Eroica Symphony, he was very disturbed because there are two chords in the beginning. And he was that those two chords, he never realized that, first of all, he took time between those two chords and the beginning of that, and that the tempo was actually a little different. I look at that and when I listen to his Beethoven recordings, later versus earlier, generally, although it's not completely that case, I'm actually quite saddened because they became much more rigid, because he became aware of these tempo differences which he didn't think he did, and he felt were not part of the score, perhaps. Okay, but in fact, this sense of tempo is something that is very important for classical music, I should say, and actually connects it in certain ways with roots in folk music. And this is something that I'll only hint at today, but perhaps we'll talk about more this way. So what I want to do is play sections of certain recordings, and this is a great thing that we actually have recordings from very early times, actually very early times in the 20th century. The earliest recording I will play for you, there are two from 1928. I was hoping to actually play some other recordings for which I have CDs from, but I can't find our CD player that I would plug into the computer, so that will also have to wait, I think. But we do have the great, I should say, advantage of YouTube. So I do have certain recordings which I will play for you from YouTube now. So if you bear with me, I will play. And so I played certain things more, certain things less. And I should start, I think, here. Let me go here. I have. See, I'm tongue-tied because I don't have enough coffee. Okay, so I will begin with this is a wonderful trio. This is also recorded in 1928. This is here of Casals, Thibault, and Cortot. This very famous trio from this time. And it's their recording of the Archduke Trio, Beethoven Archduke Trio. And I can play many parts of it, and I think it's a fascinating and brilliant recording. But I just want to play a bit of the second movement, which is the scherzo and trio, and I'll play a bit of that, and we listen to this carefully here. This will start with the ending. That's the ending of the first. Oh, wait, sorry. I should put the speaker on, but maybe I should have been reminded of that. I'm sorry. Because I have it in our little homegrown thing. I'm so sorry about that. Okay. Let's see how this is doing. Okay, this is on. Okay, let me make sure. Hello. Hello, sound. Let me get you on. Sound is here. Okay, output. Bio play. 2. Right. Excellent. Somehow the machine has learned. And I go just back tiny ways. Yeah. And let's hear it now. Yeah. Okay. Now, I just listen to how they played that. And we just have da da dum bum ba da da 1 2 3 da 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 1. You have the 16th and the triplets. Ya da dum bum ba. But they play in a ya da 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 dum bum bum dee da 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 dee bum ba, which brings out a dance character which actually feels its roots in folk music. This way. I play again. I will continue with this. Sorry, I keep stopping, but this is very interesting. Now, of course, this is not because they didn't know any better. It's like their sense of rhythm was pretty bad. That's not because of that. You see, it's like, yes, it's the great cellist Pablo Casals. He had no sense of rhythm. No, of course not. No, it's because rhythm was character for this. And they didn't care even that in one place where the yada was not quite together with the other part. In fact, that makes it more interesting because it separates the voices, the character between what is accompaniment, which is a little academic, and what is the actual melodic content. Okay, we try this again, and I promise to let this go a little longer. Ba, 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 ba. Once again. Now listen. Okay, now listen to that tempo. So the tempo, both the gesture and the tempo is a little slower. Yeah. Because the character has changed. You see, so what is very important for internal rhythm is internal character. So that the physical expression of character that way. Okay, I'm continuing. I'm sorry, I have to also talk. There's more, because we can analyze this and analyze it, because it's wonderful and very important for us as emissaries, I should say, as people who are promoters of the greatness of classical music. That way. So even here, you see, so that tempo goes, and that is part of internal rhythm. You lose that. So in folk music, that would be the jump, for instance. And it's something that I will talk about in another time in actually great detail. This, and also in regard to Baroque music. That way. Okay. Now hopefully I will keep going. Here. Okay, sorry, I stopped this just to, I know. I should not do that. But just to show how here, the sort of the creepy quality of this music, I like this, the way he sort of crawls up, needs time because it should be not so easy to that. Okay. So I go back just a little ways, and again I promise to. Actually, I have to stop here. I'm sorry to say I will do. It's just it's so wonderful to actually analyze something like this. I keep even in lessons, trying to explain things, but just you hear it in this case, and sometimes, well, anyway, so that you bum 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 bum. So there's actually his pickup of tempo, which then sets up the slower tempo. This other. this wonderful, wonderful performance. It's performances like these can be incredibly important as devices for learning about what rhythm is. So I continue this way, and I move to another of my favorites, and this is Arthur Schnabel, and this comes up to 1937. And I just play one of the movements of this, the Schubert Moment Musical that here in his recording. This is the third of them. Okay. Okay, now, sorry, I stopped this, because here's like nothing is happening, but so much is happening inside the beat. And this is something that Schnabel was an incredible master of, this importance of internal character in rhythm. This way. Okay, so I go back just to hopefully, wait, I can do this in a better way, I think. I go back to this again. Okay, and I'd like to play. Actually, I don't have time, but I know it's remarkable. So we hear. So we can't even call this rhythm in a way. This is character, and how the character is expressed in the greatest detail. This way. But I should say it's not even expressed. It's simply felt this way. So this is a visceral sense. This is what internal rhythm is. This way. Okay, I move on. I'd like to continue this, but I should move on. And I move on to symphonic music. Yeah. And this is a bit of a recording of, I should put this in the very beginning, I think, somehow. Yeah. Of the Brahms Second Symphony by the this is it's the New York Symphony. This is before the merging of the New York Symphony and the Philharmonic Orchestra became the New York Philharmonic, and it's conducted by Walter Damrosch. Damrosch, who is pretty much unknown nowadays, but was a very important conductor. He was born in 1862, and he comes out of the generation and the schooling, I should say, of Hans von Bülow and Steinbach, who, of course, were Brahms' favorite conductors. And von Bülow was someone who, in a certain way, revolutionized conducting. He was an amazing piano virtuoso, and he conducted as he played the piano. So it had the sense of nuance was there, and Brahms appreciated that. Although he said, and I mentioned that earlier too. I mentioned everything earlier, I think, in this. So that von Bülow, sometimes his performances were too picky or something, too detailed, something like that, and of course, as we heard last week from Dame Smythe, that Brahms perhaps was not the best conductor himself, as she thought. But the sense that I want to show is how this tempo and rhythm, and it was all connected, creates the structure of music. That's why in the Archduke, this actual change of tempo creates structure. And if you don't have that, you actually don't have the structure. Right. Okay, and that structure is what is expressive. So now here's the Second Symphony of Brahms, or the New York Symphony. It's really quite amazing, I would say, recording from 1928 also. And once again, I won't stop this, but I will only play a short segment, of course, of the first movement, but to hear how the structure is expressed in this elastic tempo that, of course, Brahms was very concerned that music should have. So here we are. And we start there. This is all has a sense of introduction. stop now. Unfortunately, we don't have so much time. I do want to play a couple more pieces, but one thing to understand in this performance is the great difference in character that he gives between the music which is actually on the beat, it was in 3, and the music which is off the beat. So that the one dee da dee is actually dee da dee dee da dee dee. I'm sorry, dee da da is actually, the beat is displaced. So that is not simply that Brahms wanted to displace the beat, but he had this character for these parts, which had a sense of uncertainty, perhaps. And so that tempo would always be moving ahead, and the one which is said, one, would be more staid. So in that, this sense of elastic tempo brings out the essential meaning, I could say, of this piece. Okay, I have to continue now, and I have 2 more recordings, symphonic recordings, and the first is actually from 1931, and this is the conductor Willem Mengelberg. Mengelberg, of course, he had a very kind of checkered reputation because of the Second World War. I don't get into that now, but he was one of the great musicians, of course, and he was the favorite conductor both of Gustav Mahler and Richard Strauss. And he also came out of the tradition of von Bülow, and the sense of elastic tempo. And this is the 3rd symphony of Brahms, the 2nd movement, and I will also not stop it here. We will listen to it, and we can't listen to the whole thing, but the connection in this movement that he brings out between what Brahms wrote and different kinds of both, I would say, not popular music, but sort of a communal music of the time, and folk music, is absolutely uncanny and in a way revelatory. And once again, this probably is closer to the way Brahms thought than whatever we are accustomed to nowadays. So let's hope that this is correct. Now here. I know you can't see me. Okay. Well, I was going to play more recordings, but that will wait till next week. I think this is a fitting ending to this. It's okay, yeah? I mean, you can't really. This is Mengelberg, but you can see perhaps, but... But the wonderful thing about this recording is not only the sense of journey that it has, but also how the way he was able to bring out the connection with the first movement in the middle of this, which is something that you never hear because there's no sense of tempo relation usually. Okay, well, this is another little sort of journey into, into rhythm, internal rhythm, and we will continue. Thank you for bearing with me, and I hope that this has been interesting, if not revelatory, and keep bouncing and dancing. Yes. Take care. Thank you.